All right, here we go. Mics are hot. Ready, camera one. Take one. We are rolling. Ready in 3, 2.
This Soonerscoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. If you're ready to see the rest of the world just as clearly, get your fresh perspective at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where Sooner Scoop LASIX. Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosevich. George Stoya here from the Soonerscoop.com studios. Almost said Bob. I don't know why.
Did you forget my
Bob
name?
Prisbilla will be here shortly. We'll do some stickball. Rough weekend for both the softball and baseball teams on the diamonds this
Patty
weekend.
on the hot seat.
Well, you said it. I wasn't going to go there, but we will get to that. This is a recruiting report. Going to be joined by Josh McCuistion. Got the Final Four set for the men's side of things. Should be phenomenal for the top teams in the Ken Palm era ever. Historical, all one seeds, obviously. Good to see Kelvin getting back to a Final Four after Sunday's dismantling of Tennessee. Tennessee basketball should look itself in the mirror this morning. That was embarrassing yesterday. Any takes on that?
No, I thought
that was a tangent for a second. Tennessee was terrible yesterday.
Did you have Tennessee in that game?
No, I wanted Houston to win.
Okay.
It was just I wanted some good basketball. We didn't get that.
Yeah.
Rough weekend for Jenny Baranchek and crew. Paige Becker's pretty good. 40 points, career high for her on Saturday.
Look, if you ended it at halftime, Oklahoma would be on to the Elite Eight.
That's true.
That's not how basketball's played, and Paige Becker's was just sensational. Not much
awesome.
Oklahoma could do. Oklahoma also didn't help itself, turn the ball over too many times, but sometimes you run into a phenomenal player like Paige Becker's, and there's nothing you can do.
Did you see what the line is for Monday night's Elite Eight game against USC?
I haven't.
Take a guess. UConn's favored.
17?
14.5.
14.5. I knew it'd be high.
It's just kind of crazy.
It's crazy
for
an Elite Eight game.
Right. You look at Texas and TCU on Monday night as well. The women's side of it, obviously, they'll get their Final Four set by Monday evening, probably when you're watching this. And this is a recruiting report, so I don't know how we got down the basketball rabbit hole. Basketball on the brain for a lot of people right now, with college obviously slowing down.
Thunder coming
NBA starting to ramp back up with less than 10 games left here in the regular season. We'll do our NBA playoff preview. I have Thunder in 4. What about you?
Oh, yeah, Thunder in 4.
Every game, every
game.
series.
I'm not sure they'll lose in the playoffs this year.
That's true, and that's the way it should be for the number one team in the NBA right now. Let's get to the recruiting stuff. We'll bring in Josh here in a second, but first, let us tell you about our good friends over at William & Lauren. The great George Stoya and Carrie Murdoch were up there on Saturday, as well as your brother and your future brother-in-law getting your suits customized. Because William & Lauren, WilliamandLauren.com. It is the official custom clothier of OU football. William & Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. Perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. You can visit William & Lauren as you see George and the great Aaron there in Oklahoma City, or online at WilliamandLauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as Oklahoma football. But that's the lead story. You got your suit for the big day.
Yeah, it was awesome. Super fun and easy process with William & Lauren, and Kara took care of us over there. But you could see me flipping through, some of the lining stuff. They have OU-themed ones, Oklahoma State. They've got all sorts of fun stuff. My brother actually picked a Spider-Man one. We also got our names.
We'll talk to Nick about that.
Yeah,
later.
I don't know what he was thinking there, but got my name embroidered in the inside of it. So it was super fun, easy process. Like I said, it didn't take a whole lot of time, and it was fun to go in there and kind of see everything they've got, and going with the classic black suit for the wedding.
That's right.
But they have all sorts of different styles. I didn't realize how many different details go into it. The pockets. Do you want pockets on your pants? Do you want flaps on your pockets? The different designs on the collar. There was a lot of stuff, different buttons. We picked out buttons for everything. So it was a lot of fun. So, and again, like I said, you can get the OU linings. I know my brother almost picked those, but you can get those in there. They don't just have just one that's just OU logo. They have Sooner Schooner ones, and you can kind of see a few of them here as I flip through them. But they have all different types of OU ones and Oklahoma State ones.
Thank you to William & Lauren. They've been with us here since, I think, the first get-go of the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel, and it's gone very, very well. So thank you to them. Obviously got the place up in Tulsa about ready.
It is open
in Oklahoma City. It's open in Tulsa already?
Talking to Kara about it. It's
beautiful.
It's open in Tulsa, so you can check it out down there in the 918 as well.
Obviously. That's what you want to do if you're getting a suit these days. Get it custom fitted to your size.
It was awesome.
And
Super
shapes
easy process.
and perfect. Did you get a? You don't have a zipper on your pants.
Just bringing Josh in.
All right. Well, those are questions that we all need to know. I highly doubt you're not going to be able to not go to the restroom with your suit on.
Yeah. Well,
so you have one. You have a zipper.
Yes. Yep.
God bless. Josh, how are we?
Josh is
He's muted himself. He muted
Oh,
himself.
no.
That's a first.
No, I didn't.
This is a disaster.
Now you're good. Now you're good.
Yeah.
Carrie's-
It was not me.
Carrie's accepting
And
responsibility.
Carrie's fault.
The booth muted me. Yep.
See, I got off track, and then he muted everybody. We got censorship.
George was talking about pockets and buttons and all those things, and Eddie, you got to the heart of it. That was the question we all needed to know. How was George going to handle himself? Pause. At the wedding, and now we all know. So thank goodness for that, Eddie.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was a big recruiting weekend. Not, I guess, big in terms of a lot of movement, but I do think that we're starting to get to that point, Josh, of that spring period where everything does kind of ramp back up into the recruiting side of things. Let's start with the place that everybody, I'm sure, wants to start, 2026 quarterback recruiting. It does seem like Bowe Bentley, he's named a top 3. The 3 that probably Oklahoma fans have become familiar with when talking about Bowe Bentley: Georgia, LSU, Oklahoma. We have another round of June's going to be a busy month, just as February was busy for him. June's going to be kind of that more important month for Bowe Bentley, Oklahoma's pursuit. Coming back in on June 13th through the 15th, the week before the massive weekend for Oklahoma on the 20th. But just kind of your takeaways, Josh, just in terms of Bowe Bentley, just outfitting the top 3 candidates for his services.
Yeah, I think this is not all that surprising because, guys, dating back, probably since a month or more, really since we started covering Bowe Bentley and having these conversations, I talked a lot about LSU and Oklahoma, and I still think that's what it's going to come down to. What I do find interesting, and you guys, I'd be interested to see if you think I'm kind of too far off on this. He's the only guy I'm aware of that's set for June 13th. So either Oklahoma is decided to say, okay, you're gonna be our guy. We're gonna make this the biggest blowout weekend ever. We're gonna make sure we get you in the fold, especially if Oklahoma's situation at quarterback has altered at all by then. And I know, we can talk about Jaden O'Neal setting up a visit to Florida State. So there's several things happening there. But I think that's really interesting when you kind of measure that against a lot of people not expecting Bowe Bentley to run this decision out till June. I don't know what to make of that. That feels a little odd to me, almost like, let's see if all these visits happen. Let's see if it plays out like it's scheduled. Again, to date, he's done everything exactly as he said he would. All the scheduled unofficial visits, he took them, went right down the row. I'll be interested to see if maybe we see some movement maybe a little before June, because again, he's getting to the later stages of kind of quarterback recruiting in his class, and you wonder at what point does he kind of say, I need to get in and start helping my class build and grow as, just whether a quarterback wants to be or if it's even natural to him, you kind of become the leader of the class. It just kind of comes with the territory.
Josh, if he were to make a decision before those visits, would you say that's a good thing for Oklahoma? Like if he's making that decision, it's OU?
I really would. And to me, the only caveat I would add to that is if nothing has really transpired with Jaden O'Neal to that point in time, if Jaden O'Neal is still committed and then he says, oh, you know what, I'm going to decide on May 15th. Okay, then I've got some pause. Then I wonder a little bit about what that situation looks like. But if Jaden O'Neal has decided to say, okay, I'm taking these trips, I'm not sure where I'm at with Oklahoma, and for all the reasons that we've talked about at length, I think if Oklahoma has an open quarterback spot and Bowe Bentley looks at it and, says, okay, I'm going to decide a month before I take all those official visits I had scheduled, it's going to be really, really hard for me to believe it's not Oklahoma.
Josh, you mentioned Jaden O'Neal and the current situation with him, obviously making those, I guess, the move official to Mustang, getting closer to Oklahoma, still currently committed. But as you said, he's made that visit to Georgia. He went out to Athens. He was very complimentary of the trip, as well as an upcoming trip, I believe, this weekend to Tallahassee to see Florida State again. Just the weekly installment of what the hell's going on here.
Again, I feel like it's one of those things that's like, it is. It's the definition of the elephant in the room. Like I feel like we can all see what's coming down the tracks. Like it's
Sure.
happening, and I feel like out of respect for Jaden, because Eddie, he was there with us on the show when he committed and all these things, and he's handled this as well as you possibly could have. Like, I know. It's all a weird situation, and then he comes in for the visit. And OU had just made the new offer. He's had a lot of stuff thrown at him, and was very loyal to Oklahoma. When I don't think everybody could have understood if he backed away back during the time of Seth Luttrell's firing and all that went on there. But it just feels like at some point these two are going to part ways. Like he's taking more trips. And again, he's wearing OU gear and he's saying the right things. It reminds me a lot of Colton Vasek, like that kind of deal where Colton's still telling me he's committed to Oklahoma and he's still doing the right stuff and he's still staying in contact with Oklahoma, but it just feels like his movement is headed in a different direction. Now, there's not the obvious pull that Colton had to Texas and his father being an alumni and all that stuff, so it's a little bit different. But it just feels like there's an inevitability to this.
Sure.
That if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and that's fine. I just feel like that's the way this is going.
Josh, is it as simple as OU and maybe Ben Arbuckle just maybe likes Bowe Bentley a little bit more for what they're doing offensively? Like, is it that cut and dry?
Well, I think it is, and I think we had these conversations when Ben Arbuckle was hired because you really had the 2 years to look at Washington State where it was a fairly comparable level of play and those kind of things. So you look at Washington State. 1 year, it's Cam Ward, and it's a pocket passer, and he's throwing it all over the field. And the next year, it's John Mateer, a runner, a guy again, not just like a ad-lib guy, but like called runs. He likes that stuff. Bowe Bentley is very much more a John Mateer as to where you would say Jaden O'Neal is more of a Cam Ward type of player. So I wonder if it's a stylistic preference. And again, there's also stuff. And again, this isn't like I know this is happening. You wonder if maybe Bowe Bentley he and Ben Arbuckle, there's a connection there. They've hit it off well. The family, whatever it is. And again, I don't want people to read into that as a bad thing about Jaden O'Neal because I know Oklahoma really likes Jaden. Like it's not that. It's just I wonder if maybe it's almost like a clean slate, like Bowe Bentley, Ben Arbuckle. There's clean. They started together. They'll come in together. That's probably me with a lot of conjecture there, just kind of guessing at some of this stuff. But I think there's probably something to that. Kind of Bowe Bentley being Ben Arbuckle's guy.
I was going to say, that's kind of what this goes back to. Jaden O'Neal was a guy that Ben Arbuckle kind of inherited when he got the job because OU had already been recruiting him. And
sure.
Was he committed when Arbuckle got the job?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was one of those things where
being committed for a long while, right? With Seth Luttrell. Then obviously the fallout from the Seth Luttrell, what was going to happen with Jaden. I think there was a little bit of surprise there when everything did kind of stay status quo. And he did stay committed. And then certainly the move to Mustang has kind of muddied everything in terms of which way this was going to go. But as you said, Josh, maybe, just maybe, we're getting to a point here during the spring and then on into the summer where there is some clarity and both parties, the Bentleys as well as the O'Neals, can kind of find peace in whatever that's going to be here moving forward.
Yep. Guys, I don't know what we're going to what's the thing that we have to talk about?
We'll just go back to Elijah Thomas and just run his highlights. Yes. Him and Cortland Guillory, who it seems like have turned some heads, obviously, here during the spring portion of Oklahoma camp. But, yeah, we'll just go back to the hits.
Yeah, and anybody that's watched Bowe Bentley's junior highlights, I don't think we're going to have trouble finding highlights for him if he becomes part of this class. I think there will be plenty to see of him on Huddle as a senior.
We will go through the full aspect of that when the time comes. Oklahoma did, obviously, they've returned to the practice field. They returned this past week. We talked about it all week on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. George and I went through some stuff from John Mateer, but Oklahoma did practice on Saturday. They had a scrimmage. We'll recap the scrimmage in an entirely separate video. I know that Georgia put up some notes on that. There were recruits, though, in town for Oklahoma. You saw a little bit of it. I think Noah Best was up on Saturday morning when they went through the scrimmage, but let's highlight a couple of the guys, starting with Deacon Schmidt, a offensive lineman out of Colorado, Josh, that was here over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, between Noah Best and Deacon Schmidt, that's a solid weekend for Bill Bedenbaugh. Those are a couple of guys pretty high up Oklahoma's board. With Deacon, I had a chance to talk with him a little bit, and usually he comes back, and like a lot of the offensive linemen, he talks about Bill Bedenbaugh and the track record and all the normal things you hear. But the thing that when I kind of said, what stood out? What made this trip a little unique from maybe some of your other OU visits? He talked about really having a long sit down with Brent Venables, really getting to have that conversation, and just talking about how he would fit into the program, what they're, the stuff that we all know because we've heard Brent talk about it, but, the ideals of the program, the things that they consider the foundation and how he kind of suits those ideals, those kind of things within it. So I thought that was pretty interesting just to hear a little different take because offensive linemen, Bill's become such a kind of pillar of these conversations. Whenever you talk about offensive linemen, it's like, well, I like talking to Bill Bedenbaugh. I liked watching him work. And, especially, I know, Deacon definitely commented about, just the toughness of a practice under Bill Bedenbaugh. And, and he respects that. But at the same time, I thought it was unique to kind of get a different feel from him.
No doubt. I thought you had something.
I did. Josh, this guy's definitely an offensive tackle guy. Is he a left, right tackle? Like, where do you see him maybe fitting in?
My first inclination is right. Now, again, I feel like I say this every time we get into this. It doesn't seem like Bill has ever cared that much about that. It's more of like, where are you most comfortable with your movement? It's not okay, he's got to be on the blind side. He doesn't seem to weigh it like that. But again, based on like the prototypes of what we all talk about when we talk left tackle, right tackle, I think he's a little more natural at right. I think he'd be a very good guy, kind of lead blocking, doing some of the counter stuff where he's kicking out ends and things like that. He has that physicality, but he's a good athlete. I don't want it to be said that, he couldn't play left. I think he could because when I watch him move, I think he is probably more fluid than Anton Harrison was at the same time when he was a junior. And I know that's a big comparison. I thought Anton made a huge jump from his junior to senior year. So we'll have to see what that looks like for Deacon. But again, I think he is a good athlete. It's just kind of a matter of what your preference is and kind of how you want to use him.
My follow-up question, just real quickly, Josh, this time last year, we kind of knew what that offensive line class, kind of the targets, obviously Michael Fasusi, Ryan Foje were top of the board. Where is Deacon Schmidt in terms of what they want to get out of this offensive line class?
I would say he's pretty high because when you look at this offensive line group, like you look at some of the guys they're focused on, it's a lot of interior guys. Like you see a lot more of that than you do the tackles. You don't see a lot of the guys like George, like you said, he's clearly a tackle. Okay. You go through the list and you don't see a lot of other guys like that. Like Noah Best is an inside guy. Some of the other targets are interior players. And so I kind of wonder what that's going to look like. And I kind of keep waiting for a couple new tackle targets to emerge. I mean, obviously Felix Ojo is in that conversation as well, but I think I'm pretty clear that Felix Ojo in Oklahoma is going to be a tough sell. Oklahoma's fighting the good fight, but I don't think they're going to end up winning that one. So when you look at it and you look at kind of like what you were talking about, where Fasusi, Foje, guys that were probable targets or highly possible, however you want to term that, there's not a lot of tackles in that group.
Would that also just be because of the sheer numbers that they have and the talent that they have at tackle that is considered young within the program as opposed to maybe what they don't have inside? I know that we'll talk about it on the kind of the scrimmage recap, but certainly center's a position that you want to start seeing some more names with Oklahoma involved. And that might be through the portal, maybe not so much as high school, but would that probably answer the tackle question just in terms of it feels like there's a good number of tackles right now within the program?
Yeah, I mean, Eddie, you look at it, you've got, we talk about the youth of Michael Fasusi all the time.
Sure.
Logan Howland's a redshirt sophomore. It's not like he's some old man or
even an
like
Autry Dent is still in the mix. I mean, he's a young guy, all things considered.
And one of the appeals of Backlinko was that he was a young guy with a lot of time left. So, I think that's going to be – and, again, there is this thing that kind of hangs over everything where I think there are still – as Oklahoma continues to build out this front office staff, I think there's going to be continuing conversations, and we've talked about that, of, does everybody see eye to eye on how this guy fits into the future plans and that kind of stuff. So I think that'll be even more interesting to watch. I don't know if it'll really take hold in this portal window, but maybe in the future you see some guys that, for whatever reason, kind of have a change of plans.
No doubt. Two other guys that were here, they're actually brothers. You have, excuse me, thought I was going to cough. Didn't have to, though. Congrats to me. Bowe and Nico Gendreau. Gendreau? Kind of a fun last name.
Yes.
Out of Hamilton, Arizona, Chandler, Arizona, Hamilton High School. I swear to God I'm going to get this right at some point. But Bowe and Nico Gendreau, both on campus over the weekend.
Yeah, a couple of guys that, with Nico, more of a, like we talked about last week, kind of a safety, cheetah type of player. And then you've got Bowe, who's more of a, true, probably a will linebacker if I was going to guess. But again, I haven't seen the guy in person, so we could have that conversation. And but again, I think more of a pure linebacker in Oklahoma scheme. Talked to Bowe a bit this morning, a little bit last night. Again, I thought he loved the visit from everything I've gathered. He talked a lot about just he and his family and their desires for what a program and a coaching staff would kind of be like. It sounds like Oklahoma's just about right down the fairway as far as kind of what you would see. I mean, he brought up his faith and how Oklahoma leads with that. And, I think this is another case where Oklahoma does a good job, not just finding talent, but finding guys who fit what their, belief system sounds, like religious in nature, but I just mean like the things that they hold as important, Oklahoma seems to agree with.
Now, are these guys a package deal, Josh, or could you see them going to different schools? And my second question to that is, who's leading the recruitment for each of them? Is it, Brandon Hall, Jay Valai with Nico, and then Nate Dreiling with Bowe? Like who's leading the charge on those?
Yeah. With brothers, I almost always assume it's a package deal. It's the opposite of the teammates who are buddies that everybody's like, oh, they're going to go to school together, and they almost never do. And then the brothers are like, oh, we can go to different places, and they almost never do. So it's just kind of the way that storyline that people love to play those things up. I would be very surprised if they don't end up somewhere together. As far as who's leading, I think with Bowe, excuse me, it's very clearly Nate Dreiling. I think there's a good relationship there. From the sound of things that I heard, Bowe was one of the first calls that Dreiling made once he was appointed and kind of named and had cleared all the NCAA hurdles so he could start recruiting for Oklahoma. I think that was among his earliest moves. With Nico, it's really been Brandon Hall, and I think that dates back a little ways. Brandon was doing some of the lifting for Oklahoma at linebacker while that was all being worked out, that he was given a hand, to an empty spot in the coaching staff. So with Nico, again, I get the impression that Brandon Hall is just a very relatable guy. You guys have talked to him. I've known him for a long time, dating back to his GA days at Oklahoma. And he's a guy that I think players don't always, they don't always gush about him, but it's like they always really like him. They really respect him. And they just, it's kind of like he's a guy I can talk to about anything. and it's not like, oh, he's the funniest guy ever, but we don't have much to talk about once the jokes stop. It's not that kind of deal. He seems like a guy that really connects with players.
We'll talk about Jay Valai. You mentioned him earlier, and there could be some good news for Jay Valai and the Oklahoma cornerback room. Ryan Gilbert, a cornerback, obviously, out of the DFW area, North Forney, Mesquite, Texas. Sounds like things are moving in a very positive direction for Oklahoma in their pursuit of Ryan Gilbert.
Yeah, Ryan was a guy that I wasn't even, I kind of had an idea, and I keep a running list of guys I expect to come in over certain periods of time. And I was just sitting there on kind of Friday afternoon, and Ryan's like, oh, I just want to let you know I'll be up there tomorrow. Stuff like that, you're like, I bet he's not hitting up every school he goes to and that's usually a good sign. Like, he's excited to go up there. He kind of wants people to know about it. He's not trying to sneak off or, kind of fly under the radar. So I think that's a good sign. Ryan Gilbert, from what I've gathered, that trip went really well. I talked to Ryan kind of briefly, but talking to some other people, I think Oklahoma feels pretty good about that situation, and I think they should. Kind of an interesting guy. Like, we were talking about it, a little bit different than, we've gotten so used to Oklahoma with recruiting these huge, the Cortland Guillerys, the Tristan Haynes, these 6'1", big, long, kind of rangy guys. Ryan, Eddie, we saw him at Under Armour in Dallas last year. He's a little bigger and longer than Eli Bowen, but kind of in that size. He's probably 5'10" and a half, maybe 5'11", very twitchy, real athletic. I mean, there's, again, plenty to like. He's just kind of a different corner.
Should be interesting to continue tracking that. Somebody that you hit on in Friday's Suitor Scoop that, I think Oklahoma fans, if you followed it long enough, would be familiar with his dad. John Williams played at Oklahoma 2004 to 2008. Aaron Williams out of Missouri City, Texas. It seems like Oklahoma recruits Missouri City every single season, and it's probably due to a good amount of talent down around that area. But what can you tell us about the 2027 defensive back, linebacker Aaron Williams, Josh?
Yeah, Aaron was and again, I went in to the conversation not knowing anything about his connection to Oklahoma, and we're talking, and he kind of says something like, oh yeah, Rufus was with me all day. And I was like, well, that's different. Like, I mean, it's not that Rufus isn't present. It was just, he's not a guy that is would be with a player from the minute he arrives to the minute he leaves. And so we kind of keep talking, and I said, do you know anybody at Oklahoma? Do you have any connection there? And he goes, yeah, my dad played there. And I was like, okay. And Williams is such a common name. Guys, John Williams was like one of my first recruiting, oh, he's underrated. I love this guy. I was a huge fan of this guy 20 years ago and have stood on the table.
Now he has a kid that's ready to play
time.
college ball.
Yes, just making me feel super old. And I mean, because I can remember, he's a guy, for those that maybe remember, he is a guy that was starting that 2005 season after OU'd gotten on that big run, blew out his knee in that TCU game, that very first game of the year that Oklahoma obviously ended up losing. And I've always felt like if he would have stayed healthy, he was an NFL guy. I thought he was very, very talented. So to see that, he now has a son, you're like, okay, I buy that. That makes complete sense. And Eddie, you mentioned Missouri City. For those who maybe don't make the connection, that's the same area that produced Kenneth Murray. So Oklahoma's got a pretty good track record at linebacker in the Missouri City area of Houston. So again, I like him a lot. I kind of thought he might pick up an offer while he was on campus, but my guess is if he keeps working, keeps doing the stuff he's supposed to do, I think that will come in time.
I was just about to ask Josh, where is he at in his recruitment? Obviously, 2027 kid, he's got some time.
Holds a tech offer, I believe, so far.
I wonder, would he maybe come up for camp this summer?
Yeah, he was mentioning when he's going to come up next, and he didn't have it nailed down. But I would be pretty surprised if he didn't show up for one of those days of camp. We don't get a chance to watch him and work a little bit. Hopefully he'll wear some of their the purple of Ridge Point so we can spot him real easy. That'll be great for me. But he is a real physical guy. He's one of those guys that's listed at about 6'2", 205, and he looks about that on tape. But runs well, changes direction. Again, I'm a little surprised that U of H and some of these more schools that recruit Houston all the time aren't already all over him. And I almost wonder if it's like they know they're probably not going to get that guy. Like, I think he is a, P4 type guy. I think Aaron Williams is very talented.
I mean, it could be a situation where we see it all the time, where those kids come up in the summer and they go to camp, and all of a sudden they walk out with an offer.
Sure,
it's almost like a tryout.
We've seen that here over the last couple of years, where the Brent Venables football camp during the summer has become kind of a like as you said, not necessarily an open tryout. I don't think it would want to be termed like that, but certainly a way to impress the coaches and get in front of them and show them how that you can move around. Last but not least, Josh, Tavian Branch making a visit to Happy Valley this weekend. The offensive lineman out of Pennsylvania has been somebody that we've talked about a number of times here. And, I think that Penn State's been one of those schools that we've mentioned here before as maybe that's a school that you watch out for, even though Oklahoma has a really good track record there.
Yeah, this is what's interesting, and Eddie, you were right both times on Tavian Branch. Oklahoma's really focused on him as a defensive lineman.
Okay, see, I thought my mind was going, it's Monday, can you tell? And we had a rough weekend. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things, like, I know that we've talked about him and Todd Bates before in their relationship, and then I looked down at the On3 listing, and it's interior offensive lineman, and then it put my brain into a pretzel.
I think some of his early attention was on the offensive line, and when you build that into On3's database, it kind of defaults to that, and so you have to go in, like I had to go in and specify for Oklahoma he's a defensive lineman, whatever. So what I will say, though, in talking to him, because I really thought, like, watching his tape, he's 6'3", 300 pounds, moves well. There wasn't like a thing where I said, well, okay, he's going to have to move to the offensive line. I just thought he's a defensive lineman. And what was interesting in talking to him is there are some schools that are still very interested in him on the offensive line where, we talk about it all the time. You're a good athlete on the defensive line. You go to the offensive side and you might be pretty special athletically. So it kind of changes the numbers a little bit. But in talking to him, again, you mentioned it, Eddie. It's a perfect lead-in. His relationship with Todd Bates is very strong. Oklahoma has made him a priority since very early on. He's felt that. I feel like some other schools, it's the reverse. Oklahoma gets to be the knight in shining armor with a guy like Tavian Branch because they can go as hard as they want to go. And if they're not there every single time, it's not why isn't the local school recruiting you? Penn State has to answer that question in this case. Like, why are you getting outworked here? Where we've seen that happen in reverse to Oklahoma a few times, where it was the question of, like, why isn't Oklahoma pushing harder for this guy? Why aren't they on the phone with him all the time? Some of those kind of things. This is kind of the opposite story. And I don't want to say, like, Penn State's dropped the ball. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying Oklahoma gets to have the advantage of, like, they can push and push and push, and they don't have to necessarily make the decision of, like, oh, we're definitely taking that guy, or we've pissed off half of our recruiting base. Like, they can kind of play it by ear a little bit. And again, I get the impression they like Tavian Branch quite a bit. He would make a lot of sense. That defensive tackle room, for the first time in a while, feels like Oklahoma's kind of in a situation where, like, they're going to get a good player or two. It's a question of who it's going to be. Like, I feel pretty good about their odds with him, with the Valdensone kid, the European transfer. You kind of go down the list, and I can find 3 or 4 guys where I say, yeah, there's a real chance there. It's just a matter of kind of where those dominoes may fall.
How big do you think this defensive tackle class will be?
I would, and that's the thing, George. Like, I think you've got to figure out where the break point is. Like, who is the guy that where they say, okay, if we've already got 2, he wouldn't be our 3rd, or if we've already got 3, he wouldn't be our 4th. Because, Lord, if you can land 3 elite defensive tackles, guys that you think are starter level players, how do you say no? Like,
yeah.
we'll figure that problem out later. So again, I would guess 2 is the absolute bare minimum. I bet you they'd like to have 3, because you look at last year when they lost Floyd Boucard and really ended up with just Trent Wilson, who's a really good one, but probably not the amount of bodies you were looking to bring in.
I would imagine the first-year defense coordinator for Oklahoma would have a preference on stacking the bodies along the defensive line if he gets his way. I don't know. We'll see. It's his first year, so he might have to fight for that with the head coach.
Yeah, never.
But he's also the head coach too, so maybe that helps a little bit as well. I don't know. We shall see, though. It does seem like, Josh, though, and I know that we talked about it a little bit last week on the recruiting report. It seems like here, maybe in the matter of 14 days, 2 weeks, things are going to start ramping up, and maybe you start seeing a little bit more movement in terms of this 2026 class.
Yeah, again, it just feels like you need that one guy to pop. Like maybe one guy starts the ball rolling just a little bit. Now, again, obviously, the bigger name it would be, the better it is for Oklahoma. Like there's a lot that can happen there. But it does. Like it feels like, and I know it's kind of hard for OU fans to believe because it's been a little while since they had a commitment, and there's, really it's been a while since they really kind of had a run of commitments here. But that stuff's coming. Like it's not far off. I feel like they've got 3 or 4 guys they're in real good shape with, and then obviously 5, 6, 7 more that they're as high as anybody. But we've got to kind of sort out what's going to play out. But again, I think Oklahoma is starting to build a little bit of momentum here as they head into the spring.
And how much of that too, I guess, is just figuring out what's going on at quarterback. Like I feel like when that domino falls, then everything else kind of falls into place.
And it will, because and George, that's the funniest thing is I'm saying that. I'm like, well, okay, so if some of the dominoes fall, one of them's going to have to jump out, and people are going to be like, oh, you lost their quarterback. And it's going to be, for those that haven't been paying attention, that's going to be like, oh, something's wrong here. And I'm like, I feel like if this goes the way I kind of think it will, and, like we've talked about it, where I kind of expect one to be changed for the other, you almost have to get over that little growing pain for things to really start moving forward. And then, again, once you have Bowe Bentley on hand, I think it'll be interesting to see how Texas, and I don't mean the university of, the state of Texas and some of the players in it kind of respond, because Bowe Bentley's not been a big camp guy. He hasn't been around all that stuff. But he also just led his team to a state championship that everybody saw, had a massive year. He's a guy that's going to be one of the favorites next year for the state player of the year. So he's a known entity, but I'm interested to see how active he becomes. Does he become the guy who's going to get on the phone and talk to some players and try to make this class everything that, it potentially could be?
Something tells me he will. Something tells me that there's just that quality about the quarterback at Salina, Texas, that draws attention.
And I should say, I feel so bad. We keep talking about all these things like they're foregone. We'll see.
Sure.
But again, if I'm looking into the crystal ball, that's kind of what I think will happen.
Right. And we're idiots. So
absolutely.
That kind of comes with the territory. All right. Very good. For George, Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll see you back here next week on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel's Recruiting Report. Bye-bye.